Greetings, friends, and I'd like to welcome you to another reading edition of The Grand Design Exposed by John Daniel. And we're going to be picking up where we left off. Still in Chapter 1, but we are in Section 2, which is just simply called New World Order. And before we get down to reading this section, I just want to give you a brief overview of this first chapter. This first chapter is basically a lot of the things that you've already heard, that you already know as far as everything that's being pushed out, like what these, what researchers are saying about, the corruption of like the drug trades and these types of things, and all the hoaxes like the Y2K scare, and even, because this book was written in 1999, and you can even flash forward beyond that point to 2011, 2012, and these types of things. And so what John Daniel is doing is basically giving you, the out in the open portion of this corruption. But the core of this book is a fantastic history lesson. History that, you probably have not heard before, especially when it comes to the beginnings of the United States and what you've been taught, okay? And now, quite frankly, what you've been taught, yes, is truth, okay? But what was the cause behind the scenes that brought about the United States as what I would consider the beast out of the earth, and these types of things. So there's going to be a lot of touchy subjects within this book, and all the sources that he gives are very well documented. And like I stated in the first reading, that as soon as I come across footnotes of quotes that he uses, I will put the references in the description box. And if you cannot find it online, maybe you can find it, find these sources in some kind of library somewhere, and these types of things, just like this individual has. He took a very great deal of time gathering up old encyclopedias and old historical references that you can't really reference hardly anymore. And it was a struggle to get this, history recorded. But it is documented, and it is out there, and you can find it. It might be hard to find it in this, online or Google, but again, you do your research and come across some older books, older encyclopedias to learn about certain things that happen that, you have been taught through schooling and these types of things, but you never really got the full picture. You're basically taught to accept what is being taught, but you're not being taught to question what is being taught. And that is really the main crux of the matter. Okay, is this book basically answers those questions about what you were taught, and it goes beyond what you were taught. And this is a very prophetic historical book. Some of the doctrinal issues, like at the very end of the book, and I'll get into that, I might not agree with, but I believe that the historical references that are mentioned in this book are factual, and it is something that could really open up a light in regarding to historicism and prophecy. Okay, because I believe historicism and prophecy go hand in hand. Prophecy is a continuum fulfillment through time, just like Daniel 9. There is no gap. Okay, Daniel 9, the 70 weeks of Daniel, is all fulfilled in a continuous consecutive block of time. There is no space between the 69th and the 70th week, like we are being taught today. Okay, so so I just want to give that little snippet in before we jump into section 2, which is called New World Order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the previous paragraph from the previous section, and then we're going to go into the new section here. This is on page 6. Think about this, citizens of the world, if you will even dare to think contrary to what you have been programmed to believe. But are we all so gullible, so naive, so blind as to not see through the clever maneuvers the power brokers behind the scenes are manipulating us into? Are we to seriously believe that unless mankind acts right now, this very decade, that the world situation is so hair-raisingly critical that life on our planet is going to cease to exist? Of course, we've been well informed of the nuclear weapons that can overkill our race 10 times over, if the powers that be so desire. But what about the so-called climate crisis, the economic and Y2K crisis? That the intellectual computer designers could not seem to foresee the chaos they were creating only 30 years away. A food crisis when grain is rotting in the silos, drugs with its no-win war policy. That is spawning an ever-expanding circle of moral degenerates, where moral decline reaches even the highest levels of government, as our nation is victimized and divided by the President Clinton scandal. Do you begin to see maybe a little suspicious trend here? Moving on to the next section called New World Order. All of these numerous crises seem to be rushing in at us all at once to flood and overwhelm us with a feeling of great despair. But in reality, even if these crises were valid, which one of them could you convict the general public of actually being guilty of causing or creating? Or which of us, for that matter, as a mere citizen, could correct even if we wanted to? But if you listen closely, it's the super wealthy elite power brokers of the world that is screaming at us poor working class citizens, telling us that the world is in a shambles. And with not too much discernment, it is quote unquote they, not us, that have actually caused and created the world problems. So the question is asked, and you may not even have to stretch your imagination too much for the answer. Could it be possible that there is a behind-the-scenes movement, a plot and a plan, yes, even call it a conspiracy, that is well networked and orchestrated, that is preparing the inhabitants of the world to sense a need to change from the decayed and unworkable old order to their glorious new world order? As the world is being bombarded and barraged ruthlessly with its myriad of problems, Big Brother always seems to come up with the right solution and a law that takes away another one of our freedoms, herding us a little bit tighter into their coral of regulations. There is no doubt the world would not even be interested in any new system of global government unless it could be fully persuaded that it really needs one. Remember, the perfect slave is one that is convinced he is a happy one. And certainly for the purpose of convincing us, it serves quite well if a climate of panic is trumpeted to hasten their New World Order goal to a climax. Let me repeat. I want to repeat this. The perfect slave is one that is convinced he is a happy one. You hear a lot of this talk about slavery these days and these types of things. Well, all you got to do is just look at the way your finances are being managed and how you are being governed with your finances. When you really look at that closely, isn't that a form of slavery? But yet everyone seems to believe that it's the norm, so that they're happy slaves, essentially. There is no better example for this than the two world wars, when after each war, progress was made by establishing a supranational organization for the alleged purpose of promoting world peace. First the League of Nations, then the United Nations, each organization bringing us closer to the realization of a one world government. Surely the United Nations today is the closest thing to world government that humanity has ever known. The quote-unquote New World Order is really not something new, and even though the term New World Order was unheard of 20 years ago, it is actually a catchphrase that expresses a goal. It expresses a goal that a certain religious political world power has been working toward for centuries. Okay? So basically what he's saying is the New World Order is nothing new, but it's really, in a sense, an old world order being restored. And this restoration of this old world order is a religio-political one. Okay? They have also termed their master plan to bring the whole world under the heading of one centralized rule. That is, politically, economically, and religiously. You know, I watched a program, watched a series called From Crete to Malta. It's by Walter Veith. Some of you may not agree with his theology on certain topics, mainly because he's a Seventh-day Adventist. I'm not a Seventh-day Adventist, but I agree with a lot of the stuff that he does say. But he brought out a very interesting question, and that is, what if you create the violence in the name of religion in order to stop the violence in the name of religion? All you got to do is look at Islam today. Okay? So I'm going to back up here and read this again. They have also termed their master plan to bring the whole world under the heading of one centralized rule, that is politically, economically, and religiously, which is, quote, the grand design. This plot and even the term New World Order has been kept a tight secret, known only to a select few. Only now, after the stage has been fully set and they can see the globalist golden dream shimmering tantalizingly within their reach, have those who have been scheming begun to talk publicly of their humanitarian goal. And for those who could recognize the signs, it was no coincidence that ever since former President George Bush's Desert Storm Middle East War campaign, we have begun to hear the vague term New World Order, first by George Bush and Mikhail Gorbachev, and then by others. But even now, we are not told just what the New World Order precisely means. In order to keep us all docile and pacified as each crisis looms to devour us, and an outcry of public alarm is heard, new laws are then legislated to ward off and regulate the manufactured monster for the peace and safety and well-being of our concerned society. In other words, Big Brother, in his benevolent love for us, saves us from the very menace he has intentionally created against us so that we will cry out for his protection, resulting in tighter laws to regulate and enslave us. Again, this was written in 1999. All you got to do is look at 2000 and beyond. Have we not seen this over and over and over again? Some huge thing happens, and all of a sudden people rally behind the flag. Look at 9/11. I was a part of that. I rallied behind the flag. I wanted to go fight terrorists. I'm not kidding. I was a part of that. Okay? I felt for it. So this speaks volumes to me. And from 2001 on, okay, how many things have happened that we suddenly rally behind? Let's take the example, Sandy Hook, okay. These mass school shootings. How many people rally behind this? So I mean, this has been something that's been going on, purposely created to get us to a state of mind where we will accept this change. So let me read this. Let me read this again. In order to keep us all docile and pacified as each crisis looms to devour us, and an outcry of public alarm is heard, new laws are then legislated to ward off and regulate the manufactured monster for the peace and safety and well-being of our concerned society. In other words, Big Brother, in his benevolent love for us, serves us from the very menace he has intentionally created against us, so that we will all cry out for his protection, resulting in tighter laws to regulate and enslave us. Isn't this quite the same as the protection money, quote unquote, demanded by the mafia against the tyranny they themselves inflict? And then with all the hype and hoopla, it is advertised and promoted by the media that there is a progress, a great movement for a change, quote unquote. We are led to believe that this sudden movement is now coming from a spontaneous reaction of concerned grassroots citizens of the world, appearing to come from the bottom up, as something the people of the world, quote unquote, want. Not the top down, so coming in the name of democracy, non-threatening, and not as a system being forced upon us, the inhabitants of quote unquote Mother Earth rush to embrace a program that gives hope for world peace and unity, unaware of the hidden agenda that is in store for them. All the world wanders after the beast. For those readers being introduced into this bold message for the first time, to impress upon you the enormity and seriousness of the issues at stake into which the world is about to be plunged, and so you may know for a surety that you are being set up, quote unquote, it is vital to share with you in one area alone pertinent information that should convince any skeptic who has any doubt as to where the globalist ideas are coming from. This information seems to be so classified that not a word has been passed on to us by the media, and no book to our knowledge except one has been written about it. It has to do with a series of meetings starting in the 1940s and culminating in 1959 by the founding of the organization called the World Constitution and Parliament Association. Have any of you heard of that? Actually, I didn't until I read this, and then I had to find a way to get hold of En Route to Global Occupation by Gary H. Kah. And so I did some searching on it, and there is a World Parliament website I will link you to. But this I might do a little more research on this. But this is very interesting. Okay. So this has to do with a series of meetings starting in the 1940s and culminating in 1959 by the founding of the organization called the World Constitution and Parliament Association, or WCPA. Since the WCPA was founded, ongoing meetings have been carried on throughout the world, the latest in Lisbon, Portugal, from 29th of April to May of 1991. The organization's purpose was to forge a world constitution, which it produced and adopted in 1977. So, and then what's unique is you have this whole Paris thing that happened not too recently. 175 nations end up signing this agreement, and when you look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that are on the United Nations website, it is very, very similar to the Constitution that was written by this Parliament Association. Okay? So there is some credibility to this, and it does require some digging, but this is pretty factual, and there is information about it, and I will link you to the webpage of this World Parliament so you can go and check it out for yourselves. Okay. Again, since the WCPA was founded, ongoing meetings have been carried on throughout the world, the latest in Lisbon, Portugal, from April 29th to May of 1991. The organization's purpose was to forge a world constitution, which it produced and adopted in 1977. The resulting document came to be known as the Constitution, as, quote, Constitution for the Federation of Earth, unquote. Further meetings have been instrumental in forming a world cabinet to serve until 25 countries have ratified have ratified the world constitution, making it then eligible to usher in a full-blown world government, quietly prepared and waiting to be implemented. In the document that will soon efficiently serve its masters in their rule over us, should you desire further information, including ample evidence of reproductions of the original WCPA documents, the reader is encouraged to purchase the eye-opening book En Route to Global Occupation by Gary H. Kah. Maybe if I could find a PDF file of this book, I might end up, reading that book here as well on my channel. I'm not really sure. I'll have to read over it and see if it will be worth the read. There are other secret and semi-secret organizations such as the International Bankers, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberger Group, Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, the New Age Movement, Illuminati, and Freemasonry, who are all deeply involved in global politics and who actively promote the uniting of the people of our planet under a new world order. However, and understand this well, because it is extremely important, these all are but mere front organizations. Okay? I want to include Zionism. I want to include Jewry as well. People that lay these claims that Jews run Hollywood and these types of things. You can kind of say that, but they too are mere front organizations, behind which the true source of power hides and uses to distribute and channel its designs. And as in any conspiracy, secrecy and shifting attention and blame away from itself is paramount to its success. But this conspiracy, quote unquote, is above all conspiracies and make all others pale in significance. No stakes could be higher, no prize could be greater. To rule the entire world and to control every human being in it begins to touch upon a realm that is beyond the scope of man's grasp. For whether man wants to acknowledge it or not, there is a sovereign God who is watching and promises to intervene. That's going to do it for this reading here in Chapter 1, Section 2 of the Grand Design Exposed, called New World Order. And we will pick up where we left off in with Section 3, which is called Christ, Our Only Hope. And there's only 2 more sections here in this chapter, and then we're going to start getting into some very interesting history. So I appreciate you following along with me in this reading. This could take some time, but again, I think this is some information that has to get out there. So again, thank you for listening. Truth be told, truth be known, stay safe, God bless. Links of the certain references that I stated will be posted in the description box below. So again, thank you for listening, and God bless you.